Hey, everybody. I'm here with JR, or the invisible JR. He's off camera. He just had knee surgery, and his battery for his knee needs to be recharged. So I'm sure he will be back very shortly once he recharges his battery. Uh, Hello to everybody out there. If you have questions and I could see them, or if JR's knee ever comes back, then we can answer any questions that anybody has that we can answer, or if we can't answer, we'll just make it up. Obviously, this is not legal advice, of course, and it's not legal advice. It's just opinion. For entertainment purposes, don't rely upon anything said as usual ad infinitum. Um, Appreciate everybody who's watching. If you have comments, questions, feel free at any time to put it in there. And sometimes I'll even look at them. But I will certainly look at them if you post them after the thing is posted, after this silly video is posted. I, of course, will look at everybody's comments and try to respond if I can. And if I had a good right eye like this, I would answer almost every question. Anyway, as we wait for JR to recharge his knee, I kind of wanted to talk about what we were going to talk about a little bit today. Amongst it, it's going to be like an odd mixture of things. We will have our light moments, of course. Hold
There I
on.
am.
Oh, there he is. There
Sorry
is
about that.
Mr. Have you recharged your knee? I explained.
No,
I explained to everybody that you have an electric knee now, and you had to recharge the batteries. Is
my
that not
laptop,
true?
my laptop. I didn't realize the battery on my laptop was dead, so I had to hobble out to get my charger. So I apologize.
He's very modest. He's working with Elon Musk. It's the first electronic knee transplant, so it's pretty amazing.
Now,
Uh,
did you tell them I had knee surgery so they know what the hell you're talking about?
no, no, I didn't. That's HIPAA. HIPAA, right? We all know HIPAA.
No,
I
you're
can't.
not a health plan. All right, sorry. Go ahead.
No,
Keep
go
talking.
ahead. You can tell him why we should be feel bad for you.
I tore my meniscus back in the summer, and I tore it really bad. I actually I had already had a tear in it and didn't realize it, and tore it worse. And so they went in and shaved the bone and stitched it up, and then trimmed the meniscus. But it hurts like a son of a bitch.
Was that during one of your professional football game
Yeah, I
appearances?
was I
Yeah,
was at spring training with the Eagles.
I see. How was that? How are the Eagles doing this year, by the way?
Oh, they beat the Saints. You know what? And somebody was giving me shit about it during the weekend. I wish I could remember who it was.
Oh, I have to. I
So
have to. I have to do a shout out. I don't know if he's here or he'll see this at some point in time. To Ace, to Ace. I don't know. I'm not sure, but Ace, can you answer my question? Who won between the 49ers and the Rams yesterday? I didn't see the score.
I
So
didn't
maybe,
either. Who did
yeah,
win?
maybe, yeah. The Rams won like 27-24. They came back on
Oh,
the 49ers. Um, but I didn't
I
see
love
it.
that.
I didn't see it or wasn't aware of the score. But thank you, Ace. If you figure that out, let me know. I know you're a big 49ers fan, so I hope you were able to sleep last night. Second, because it last week I think we talked about. I think we did a Tuesday last week.
Yeah.
Um, oh, by the way, we're going to do jokes. I haven't done the jokes yet. Starting this week, we're going to do. We're going to see how this works out. When we get to 26 minutes, we're going to do the sponsored 26-minute joke. Tonight we have it's sponsored by me. I'm sponsoring it tonight. But after tonight, if anybody wants to sponsor the 26-minute joke, feel free. And it might even be better than the upfront jokes. It's possible. It's very possible. It's also possible it's not, but we shall see. So we're going to talk a little bit about, we will talk about GTII because there's a bunch of interesting issues that have arisen beyond just what's going on. And obviously there's stuff that has happened since the last time we spoke about GTII. It's pretty active. I know JR has a copy of the order, right? That's a significant document, right? Would you agree with me? Yes.
Yes, I would
He,
agree with
agree,
that.
he agrees with me. And we know that document was entered and signed by the court. I think it was on September 18th. And, well, there's a bunch of motions we'll talk about when we get to that point in time. Before we start, Oh, I know what I wanted to do because this is one thing. This is not a joke, but it is kind of a joke. I thought. Uh,
Isn't this whole
Jr. is a
show a
big,
joke?
I know Jr. is a big football fan, so I used to play at one point in time. Was a good softball player, but I wasn't a good baseball player. Obviously, it's hard with one eye. It would be harder with one arm, but it was hard enough with one eye. But I was a really good softball player, and I played one time in a Monday night league, and the umpire was a big football fan. So when he would call balls and strikes and whatever else he would do, he would have his headphones on. He would be
Uh-huh.
listening to the Monday night football game as he was calling the game. I thought that was pretty good. I should add also he was drunk at the same time. Besides that, so I thought that combination as an umpire, I thought it was well done, well skilled. All right, my three. Um, my three quickies here are, I think, in order. I'm trying to do it in order. Do Transformers? GR split.
No, I'm still here.
Okay, your visual's gone though. Do Transform? It's actually a better picture of you. I have to be honest. Do Transformers? There you go.
I had
Do
to take my sweatshirt.
Oh, okay. Do Transformers? You know Transformers? That stuff. Do they have car or health insurance? Which one?
Do they have car or health insurance? I don't know. That's a good. I'm stumped on that one.
I know you are right. That was a good answer, by the way. Very, very good answer. Secondary. Oh, by the way, I was supposed to ask you about potatoes, but I forgot to ask you about potatoes. I backed a horse at the horse track yesterday at 10-1. Unfortunately, it arrived at 3:45. And last but not least, wow, that got more of a reaction than I expected. You must be on painkillers. That could all be the only explanation.
I am.
Oh yeah, that's the explanation. I wish it was true. I wish it was true.
That was a damn good joke, Richard.
Thank you. Okay, I had dinner, with a chess champion last week, because the tablecloth at the restaurant was checked. It took him 45 minutes to give me the salt. That's a chess joke.
Oh, okay.
Check.
I guess. All right.
You get it right? All right.
Yeah,
all
you
right.
should have stopped at the last one.
I know. But we got the 26-minute one. We haven't got to that one yet.
Oh, great.
That one, I believe, by the way, I predict you will like that one. That's
all
just
right.
my prediction. All right. So we want to talk about GTI, but before we did that, I wanted to talk about Hezbollah, my favorite. I don't even know what the correct pronunciation is. Is it Hezbollah or Hezbollah?
I'm terrible with pronunciations.
Well, how would you pronounce it? Let's hear it out.
I'd say Hezbollah.
Oh yeah, by the way, just as a reminder, what town do you live in?
I tell people I live in Hershey, but I really don't live in Hershey. I live about 15 minutes east of Hershey in a little town called Lebanon.
Yeah, so that's ironic.
So when Richard posted that joke about Hezbollah the other day and JR blowing up in Lebanon, he didn't realize that's actually where I'm from.
I did not. I was, it's very interesting to me. Obviously, I've not hidden the fact I'm Jewish, whatever. I'm not super religious. I'm not wearing a hat because I'm religious, by the way. And obviously, this is a really complicated time for a lot of things. I wish there was peace in the Middle East. Obviously, I wish everybody was great. But on the flip side, I kind of understand that it's a matter of numbers. I'm really just sheer numbers. There are very few Jews in the world, 20 million. There are like 1.5 billion Muslims in the world. It really doesn't make a difference what the issue is, just the numbers don't work. So that's how I look at it. I actually convinced my son of that also. He now believes that too. And my father-in-law, who's now deceased, who was like a super smart guy, he was a doctor, much smarter than I. He used to always rail about numbers because he recognized that was an issue. And I think that is an issue. So I kind of look at it differently. But so the way I would communicate that is, so we have Hezbollah and Hamas. And I'm not talking about like innocent Palestinians. I'm just talking about Hezbollah and Hamas. and I hear the news reports, and I was thinking, so if I replace those names with ISIS, Al Qaeda, then do we have this conversation? So to me, again, that's reflective of numbers. So in the grand scheme of things, it's not that important to that many people. So it's not treated as a big deal. United States has obviously been in that position before, Afghanistan, whatever. We did whatever we had to do, and people might have bitched, but that was it. So I think it's just kind of like numbers in part. And the way I'm gonna kind of reference that is last week, yeah, last week they blew up some building in your hometown, um, and it was a 7-story building. So apparently, what it was is they uh, shot 2 bombs in to get to a lower level, and on the lower level, and I think this has not been disputed. The lower level, there were a bunch of commanders. One of the commanders, his name is, and my point is, this should be huge if you're an American. One of the guys who was hit, his name is Ibrahim Aquil. He was one of the leaders associated with Hezbollah. He was with Islamic Jihad. He's been on the United States wanted list since the 1980s because he was responsible for the bombing in Lebanon of an embassy and the 240 Marines that got killed in 1983 during the civil war in Lebanon. He was involved and responsible for that bombing too. That's killing American Marines.
Right.
And he's also apparently responsible for it's kind of like the guy you would see in the movies who would be kind of like very difficult to track down, but he'd be causing mischief wherever he went and he'd be passing it along. It's one of these kind of guys. But like obviously for the Americans, super bad guy, and he was killed 3 days ago. I was trying to think, other than bin Laden, maybe Timothy McVeigh, maybe like that. Has there been I don't, and by the way, that's just one attack. They use one for like multiple attacks, killed French, United Nations. I mean, a myriad of people, but in sheer numbers, probably next to bin Laden, if not more, up there, but no big to do.
Right.
It would be interesting to see if there had been a big to do if it wasn't Israel who had carried out the strike. That's just my point. Americans should be, notwithstanding everything else, Americans should be proud that they got their just dessert. And that's one thing that's different between, again, I have plenty of issues with Israel,
Right.
many. But one thing they do is, and they've done it historically, if they want to go get you because you've done something, at some point in time they're gonna get you. Happened like in the Munich Olympics, whatever. But historically speaking, they've been very persistent, and that's kind of, they believe that is a deterrent, and they believe also that they can't afford to lose a war. Now, right or wrong, but that's what they feel. They feel if they lose one war, that's kind of the end. So it gives you a different perspective on events. The United States, I don't think we've ever had that. At least, World War II, obviously that's one. But most wars we fight, we're kind of like somewhere we're doing some cleanup on something, but it's not gonna. It's our existence is not at risk.
Well, yeah, and we've never, I mean, in modern times, we've never had our existence in risk, at least not our sovereign existence.
That we know of. I guess like the Cuban Missile Crisis could have been that time.
Well, I think it's more, I mean, Israel, I mean, they stand to lose everything: land, their way of life, all 9 yards. You know, I think nuclear war obviously is in a different context, but the United States has never been in a position to lose everything outside of the nuclear, mass destruction with the former Soviet Union. So yeah, it's hard for average Americans to relate. I struggle relating with the whole conflict, to be honest with you. I
Me
mean,
too.
you know,
Listen, I do too. That's that's how complicated it is. I do too.
right?
I do too.
You
And
know,
it's
and
not
and
it's
it's
not like Jews have a uniform belief. We don't. We
right.
don't.
Well,
I wanted to back up just because I don't know how old people are, and I'm really old. So when we talk about like the Cuban Missile Crisis, maybe some people have never even heard about that. So I think it was 1962. The Russians brought missiles into Cuba, and they were aimed at the United States. And the United States then blockaded, I think, Cuba, and the Russians stood down. And
down. Well, I think
I was only 72 years old when that event happened, but I don't have a great recollection. But I think to people that were cognizant of what was going on, it was a very stressful time.
Well, I think the one thing my generation, and obviously some to some extent your generation as well too, but the generations after mine, all they've ever known is conflict in the Middle East. All they've ever known is conflict between Israeli and whatever, the Gaza Strip, Palestine, whatever whatever name you want to put on it. That's all
Yeah,
we've ever known.
I
You know,
agree.
I've
I
always
agree.
in my entire life there's always been conflict in the Middle East.
Me too.
So it
Me
it
too.
does. We, by virtue of that's all we've known, have become desensitized to it. So
My parents moved there. So my sister is Israeli. So my parents deceased. They moved there after World War II. They moved there in 48. So Israel was established in 1948. So they got there after independence. My father was in the army, I think 1956, because there's been like exactly what you said. It's an unfortunate region that's been in conflict constantly, and probably long before that too, not just starting then. It's been an area of conflict throughout, and it's been taken over by all kinds of regimes of all different inklings over time.
I think sometimes we as a country take that stuff for granted. We take for granted that, yes, and when I say this safely, yes, there's, America is not involved in any major war. But obviously we are involved in wars. But people like me, I take that for granted. I went to law school with a young lady, and she was from Croatia, and they left Croatia because her father was part of the revolution, and they were hunting those people, and that's why they came to America. Now, I remember her telling me that story my first year of law school. Well, how did why did you come to the United States? And she shared that, like, he literally had to leave his home country because he was being hunted because he was part of the Bosnia Herzegovina and Croatia, what was basically the former Yugoslavia. As they broke up, he was part of the revolution and felt his life was in danger and put his family on the boat and came to the United States.
Yeah,
So,
I was gonna
that's
say is like most people take for granted because I hear it sometimes why, because other countries act differently than we do.
yeah.
We presume that every country should follow our standards and does. But I was thinking, for example, the thing that we take for granted. Now, it's not absolute, obviously, and people would argue about social media and being kind of excluded. But obviously, I don't think there's any other place that has a First Amendment. Number one, most places or a lot of places don't have a constitution, so that they'll start off with that. And
Well, and
there's
if they
again,
do have a constitution, they're not following it to the letter of the law like we do.
yeah, or at least as close to. Again, we have our own issues, but just with freedom of speech, we take that for granted. Most places don't. And notwithstanding, like for Israel, for example, because they believe they can't afford to lose a war, they give more discretion to the military to censor speech. They do. So that's a choice. We couldn't do that in the United States because people would go up. But you can go to any
They'd lose
country.
their minds.
Yeah, but you can go to any country, almost any country. If you speak out against the government, you're at risk. Some people might say
Mhm.
that you might be at risk in the United States, but compared to other countries, it's not even close. By the way, if you see any questions of merit or of not merit, please jump in and jump on them.
Someone
Um,
made. I want to read this comment because Thank you. It's, what's next? GTII. JR is smarter and better looking than not.
oh my. Does that person have glasses or no glasses?
I don't know.
Okay, that's important. I think that's an important consideration. Thank you. Thank you, by the way. I appreciate that comment. Um, um, the other thing I was going to say, like, it's been happens. Governments do things like I remember the Russians are pretty. What was that?
He said, JR, sorry, but it's also a low
Oh
bar.
my lord, my lord, my lord, my lord.
Oh gosh. All
Okay,
right. Thanks
all
for
right,
thanks for
all
the
right, all right.
comments.
That
We
was a
needed to
legal
laugh.
joke, right? That was a legal joke. A low
I
bar.
was there was two
Very
puns there.
good, very good. I like that. Even unintended, that was great.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah, I don't know. I've said my piece. We should be happy that the guy who killed our Marines is dead. Seriously, I have no qualms. I'm sorry that innocents get killed, but I know, like in Lebanon, what's going on now, and it's crazy because Lebanon is basically a country without a government, unfortunately.
Yeah. I
But
mean,
I know, like this morning, literally they were calling because the Lebanese government was saying it. So Israel was literally call. So if you were in a building and there was like a missile in your building, you were hiding a missile. They called you. They said leave, and they did this to many people. The Lebanese government. I knew it was accurate because the Lebanese government confirmed it. Whatever. But anyway, it's still not great. But I'm glad the guy's dead, and we should be happy because the guys who kill our people, like in that regard, that's like a Charles Manson, in my opinion. That's a stone blood psychopathic killer, and I have as much concern for him as I did for Charles Manson.
yeah, the thing that has always gotten to me under my skin, the women and children, you know,
Yeah, I agree. I
numbered
agree.
and it doesn't matter what side it is. I have a hard time stomaching that. So,
I listen. I can't disagree. I can't. If it doesn't bother you, that's a problem. It
exactly.
is it's a terrible situation. All right. So I said my piece about that. Now we're going to talk about GTII and one of the things. Oh, I said I promised this. And I don't like to promise something and not deliver. I said we talk about your favorite color. So what's your favorite color?
My favorite color is black.
Black. Okay, I'm a blue. So black and blue, we look very bruised, I believe. Um, so and your potato, do you like potatoes or no?
Yeah, yeah, I like potatoes. Uh, I mean, I pretty much eat them any kind of way. Uh, I have a really good chive and garlic and cheddar mashed potato recipe that I make every now and again. And I love like turkey or potato stuffing, potato whatever you want to call it, potato stuffing, potato filling at the holidays. So we
You,
grew up.
you ever had potato ice cream?
No,
Neither have I.
but I do like gnocchi potato pasta.
Okay,
I
love it,
actually made it homemade or
love it.
from scratch one time. It was a
Yeah, that's
brutal.
it's
It was good
yeah,
though.
that's good stuff. Good if you like potatoes. Thank you very much for your potato summary. All right, now I wanted to go into because we're close to the 26-minute joke, by the way.
Yes,
Um,
we are. I've been monitoring.
I know. I wanted to talk about little GTII. So, first of all, a message from the receiver. So, I've communicated the receiver, and the receiver said it was okay for me to communicate that. So, I'm going to communicate that he's expecting to deliver kind of a state, at least a preliminary message to shareholders within the next couple of weeks. He
Good.
will deliver a report to the court within 60 days. He's really anxious and set on being transparent on in anything he does. And anybody who wants to reach out to him is feel free to reach out to him and do your own. But I've had communications with him now on multiple occasions. Seems very diligent. And again, the fact that his compensation depends on him getting assets back for the company, I think is really beneficial for us. So,
So I,
there's ways of structuring compensation. A receiver could just get a fee and charge and do it that way, or they could take a percentage of whatever they were able to bring back. One's a risk on them, and they're on your team too at that point in time, right?
Well, yeah, that's
Yeah.
to the benefit of shareholders.
Yeah,
So
the
the
other
more he gets
way,
paid, the
yeah,
more
the other
benefit.
way, right. The other way, if you're just getting a fee, it may be great, but not maybe as quite as motivated to get back money and shares and things like that. And by the way, if anybody knows anything about property, income, whatever of the relevant players, please reach out to me. I'm happy the receiver would like to know. I'm not going to disclose who relevant players are. You could figure it out yourself. Um, so um, so that's going on in terms of GTII, in terms of the receiver, and he's has access to the servers. He's had communication with the accountants, the new accountants. They're cooperative. I think he has control over the servers, so nobody else does. He has orders that permit him to continue to operate the business, which he is in the process of doing. I think he was sending out a bunch of letters. I know, like the day one, because he told me he had sent out a bunch of letters, I guess, announcing his presence and authority, and he's now sorting through the details. I know that he understands that, and I'm not speaking for him. This is my thoughts, but I know he understands that to getting the audit completed, trying to get it back uplisted so it could trade, all that stuff is essential. Besides getting assets back, whatever. But the first step is get the audit done, be able to get in compliance, and move forward.
So let's go back to something you said, though. I want to inject a question in
Sure,
case
sure.
confusion. So you said he's going to provide a report back to the court within 60 days. Is he required to do that, or is that a goal he has set for himself?
I don't know if I think he's required. Well, you know what? I don't know.
Yeah.
He's required to report. I don't know if the timing was
Right. Well, that's what
discretionary.
I was getting at.
Yeah, I
That's
don't
what I
know.
was getting
I'll check. Good question. I'll check. I don't know. I just know it was 60 days.
at. Got it.
But I don't know if that was his choice. It's got to be long enough so he can get some stuff done, because ultimately he's want to report something of substance to the court either
Well,
way.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's why I was asking.
Yeah.
We got a question here. So did they dismiss the defamation lawsuits against you?
No,
Have they responded to the letters that you sent?
no.
Okay.
Yeah, and we're going to talk about that a little bit because it's kind of interesting when we get to that point in time.
Okay. Well, someone
So,
asked it.
okay, no, I appreciate it. I appreciate all the questions. So the receiver is moving forward, and again, I'm in contact with the receiver, and I will be able to communicate whatever I can communicate. I will communicate. I certainly could communicate what's going on in general, and if I am unhappy about something, I'll communicate that too. So that's just the way it is, and I think the receiver understands that by this point in time. I've had enough communication with him. I think he appreciates that. But again, I think he's being very diligent, and I have nothing negative to say. And he has his own counsel that kind of helps him along. So that's the receipt.
26-minute mark.
Oh, are we? Okay. 26 minutes. This is a 26-minute joke sponsored by Not Legal Advice tonight. And the joke is butt cheeks is butt cheeks one word, or do you need to spread it apart?
It's probably better if you put a hyphen in the middle.
Okay. All right. I thought that was pretty funny myself. Okay. All right. That's the 26-minute one.
All right.
All right. Okay. I can't believe you're actually waiting for that. That's wonderful. So that's receiver. Now we have the litigation that's ongoing. The litigation that's ongoing is the Nevada, and I'm going to separate the two, because we're going to talk about conflict of interest too, which is kind of interesting. And this is all opinion, by the way. Again, we're just talking. If you guys trusted us, whatever. So they filed, I think I told you, a motion for reconsideration, which is pending. It's pending. They also then filed a motion for a stay, I think based in part upon the same stuff that they filed the motion for reconsideration. Do I think either of those are likely to be granted? Do I really know? No. Do I expect it? No, I do not expect it. To me, it sounds like a bunch of guys who are running around, don't know what they're doing, and are really concerned about what's happening, and they feel the pressure. and now they're trying to do whatever they can to whatever to stop the action. So that's one part. So they file these motions, they'll be heard. There's going to be additional oppositions filed. I don't expect a great likelihood that they'll be granted. I don't think they expect it either. And I think I've heard that indirectly. So just to kind of be direct with you, I believe sometimes when I hear something, it's coming from them. I don't think they intend it that way, but I think somehow they have loose lips amongst their group. And so sometimes I think information comes out and it's not really, they didn't intend it to come out, but it did. Like I'd heard, for example, recently, I'd heard that in, I think, April, they specifically asked about me. It was like there was a conversation with one of the principals, and he specifically asked about me. And just kind of interesting. And they also asked something about this person about being involved in the company. And then on one time, if you remember, Kathy Griffin sent me something. Do you remember? Kathy Griffin, not the comedian, I don't believe. Although I'm not sure. Have we ever verified it's not the comedian?
No, we haven't, but
okay.
I think it's highly unlikely.
You know what? I think it's, in my view, I think it's the comedian myself. But at one point in time, she sent an email to me. I don't know why she did, but she complained about me too at the same time. Do you remember that email?
I
do.
She
complained about Hoffman because, he was, and this is before we really knew the depths, right? We didn't know the depths of this.
This is back when we still thought they were competent.
Yeah. If they aren't competent, whatever. But
okay, so hold on, we got a question here.
Sure.
It's come up a couple of times, but someone used caps, so it must be pretty important.
Okay. All right.
Market Watcher, JR, please ask not how long they're anticipating it will take to reactivate the stock. I'm assuming I think the question is at what point will the audits be provided to OTC to get it back on the OTC market so it's tradable?
Supposedly, and then we'll have to see, because we'll have to see once we go through it, but the audits were in process and they were awaiting some information from the company about financial information. I don't know what that information is, but it sounded like they had moved quite down the road. So if they move down the road, and again, I've never done this process, so I don't know the scenario, but after the audits were done, then I think they would go back and reapply, and because they would be compliant at that point in time.
Right.
And they would try to ask to be uplisted to the next, whatever level they could get uplisted to.
Yeah, I don't know what the requirement is. I mean, I know that they were booted because their financials weren't up to date. Someone says here they're 22, 23, 24. Is that the last time? Is that how many it's been?
Well, they're getting audited on the 22 and 23. They're doing the 24 also.
Now, okay.
But the 22 and the 23 are the ones that issue with the Borgers. Those were the ones that were so glorious. They need to
redo.
They were glorious. They were glorious. Maybe they're like 100% accurate, right?
Right.
Yeah, doubtful, right?
I'm pretty certain I'd be doubtful too.
No, maybe, but it could be better, right? Maybe it's like, when you play Monopoly, there's that, when was the last time you played Monopoly?
It's been a while.
Yeah, me too. But I remember the card, I think it was Community Chest. The bank makes an error in your favor. Here's $500. Maybe, we'll get
that happened in real life.
No, it does not. But maybe we'll get a positive surprise. So the motions are going on. A spate of motions. Now, what concerns me about the motions myself as a shareholder, and I've certainly communicated this to counsel for the other side. As a matter of fact, so now I'm talking about my action, the defamation action, which I've asked about 15 times for them to dismiss. They haven't. But today I filed something like a supplemental brief. And in the supplemental brief, since it's relevant, and I'll get your opinion, I would like your opinion on this.
Okay, well, we got a couple questions here that are still related to trading that I don't want to lose.
Okay.
Okay. And someone asked a really good question.
I'll be the
So right,
judge of that.
it was blue five. So who is making GTI stock pricing going up and down if most of retail is locked out from trading it?
Yeah, if you're a brokerage or you're an accredited investor, you can. But I think most of the trading volume is pretty low.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
because it's on the expert market, and there's requirements for you to be able to trade on the expert market,
Yeah.
and most brokers won't allow
Yeah.
retail to trade on the expert market.
Yeah.
But someone is buying and selling it.
It looks like to me, whenever I look at the volume, it looks like there is volume. But like I looked one time and maybe like so on the Pacific time, your time, East Coast time, let's say it was like 11:30 a.m. and there'd been like 200 shares traded. So there is trading, just not a lot.
Right.
Uh,
I can't
yeah,
see. I can't.
compared to the float, compare what the float is, it seems to be insignificant. Also, if you're, maybe it's also if again, this is not like an unknown stock, right? So maybe if you were in a position that you were trying to sell a boatload of shares, maybe
Mhm.
you'd be concerned that this is something that would be flagged right away, and you'd have a issue. Maybe it would flag, because again, there's no doubt that the SEC knows about GTII, even if it's only through Alpine, right? Even if it's only indirectly through Alpine.
Right.
Right. But we know they've referenced it, the DCCC referenced it. So I know it. So I would think it'd be risky if, in fact, again, because I don't know this part, if in fact there is a large amount of shares, I think it would be risky if you like all of a sudden sold a whole bunch, because I think it would, especially now, there's no volume. Any kind of sizable transaction is going to get scrutiny. My opinion, it'll get scrutiny, and so I don't think, but who knows what's going to happen. Did you have another question?
No, no, no. That was it. I
Okay.
just didn't want to get off track because it was a good question.
No,
So
no, no. I appreciate everybody's question. It's helpful. It's helpful because it shows, because a lot of times it's hard to describe legal stuff without it being
well,
basically sound like nonsense. So
you just brought up a good point though, that a light bulb went off when you said about, no one's going to be trading large volumes right now because it is under a microscope, but it's even more so under a microscope with all the other people outside involved in these lawsuits looking at it. I mean, you and I both know if you called me up tomorrow and said, "Hey, someone just dumped, 100 million shares," you and I'd be, okay, how are we communicating this out to the receiver? How do we want to approach this? Because that's a big deal.
yeah,
Oh yeah, so yeah, it's
I
a
think
good point.
any sizable transaction.
Good point. Yep,
Yeah.
it's a
But
good
but anything's possible. I understand people's concerns about that, obviously.
point.
Um, so again, so that brings us through that. So what I wanted to kind of reference though is a conflict of interest I think that exists, and I think this exists affecting all shareholders. So here's the setup. So kind of when you're a lawyer, you're not supposed to take positions that present a potential conflict of interest. It's not about even an actual conflict of interest, but a potential conflict of interest. So, for example, you can't, just as an example, you can't represent the plaintiff and defendant in a case, right? Because that
Hey,
would
you
be
can't do that.
no, you can't, because that's a potential conflict. Whose interests are you going to protect? Because this is the issue. You have to be able to represent everybody's interests equally, and you
Right.
can't give somebody else a little bit of a boost because they're giving you money or whatever else. So that's kind of the place, and it doesn't have to be an actual conflict, because it may be they're innocent. Um, an apparent conflict is enough, and there's ways sometimes you can waive a conflict if, in effect, everybody is fully informed and operating in good faith, and there really is no conflict to be waived. So just kind of put that down. And the harm or the issue is, from the client's sake, just kind of thinking it from a client's sake, the problem is that now I might have to hire multiple lawyers if there's a conflict. And if I have to hire multiple lawyers, that means obviously a lot more in legal fees, et cetera. So it's not surprising sometimes that somebody might try to have what I would perceive as potential conflicting positions representing conflicting parties. So now this is like a law school exam for JR here. Okay, so here we go. So there's a lawsuit in California. A corporation and two of its officers and directors sue a shareholder of said corporation. Okay, and they represent the corporation and the officers and directors. So let's stop it there. So if you remember, I don't know if this is going back, is there a problem in representing the corporation and the individual officers and directors?
Yes, there's a conflict of interest.
Okay. And you can kind of get a waiver of that, right?
Yeah, you could get a waiver.
And again,
But there's a couple of different things going on. Are they? I mean, obviously we know they're representing the corporation, but then are they representing the officers and directors in conjunction with their duties within the corporation? That's acceptable. If they're representing them outside of the scope of their officer and director duties, that's a conflict.
well, okay. So in this case, if it was a defamation action personally against those, the plaintiff officers and directors, so they were bringing a personal action that shouldn't be connected to the corporation, correct?
Correct.
Yeah.
That's an issue. That's a
Okay.
conflict.
So let's say, basic kind of understanding, there's a conflict of interest. It might be waivable. You might be able to get a waiver, but you really have to decide, is there really a conflict? Because if acting for one party would be to the detriment of the other party, then you absolutely cannot do that. Okay. So that's where we start. So that would be a problem by
Right.
itself. Okay. Now we take it one step farther. There's an action in another state. Same attorneys now representing the officers and directors in a derivative action against the corporation. So just kind of remember that how we started this question. I started kind of like a joke representing the plaintiff and defendant. But in one side, right, they're a plaintiff against a shareholder, right? In the defamation action, it's GTII. These are the plaintiffs, GTII, and two officers and directors suing Hoffman, me, for defamation. In the Nevada action, it's same law firm representing the officers and directors against the corporation because the corporation is pursuing a derivative action. So in the defamation action in California, they're representing the corporation as a plaintiff. And in the action in Nevada, they're opposing the corporation representing the defendants. So we take that conflict and this is my opinion. You agreed with me about the first part about there being conflict between representing, or at least you could argue there's a conflict in terms of representing the company and those officers and directors. I think it goes way beyond that because I think they're representing both sides of the equation here. Mm-hmm. They're representing the corporation and they're against the corporation on the other action at the same time, the very same time. It's not like we have even a gap in time. At the exact same time, I think they have, my opinion, I think they have absolutely conflicting position.
I think it's questionable. I would agree with you there. It gives you it would be enough if I were the sitting judge. It would give me pause for concern.
Yeah. So I brought it. I filed something and I brought it to. I didn't try to disqualify it. It's something you could do, if you thought there was because there is a question. Because in my opinion, that is besides the conflict we talked about at first, the bigger picture I think is a greater conflict. So there's an issue. But you could decide, you can decide to bring it to the court's attention just as a reference point, or you could file a motion to disqualify. And as of now, I have not filed a motion to disqualify. I don't think it was really as relevant until that final order by the court, that Nevada order, because that's where I'm really thinking. On one side, the Nevada judge found there was intentional misconduct by management, which included
Right.
several of the individuals that were being represented in the Nevada action. So how could you then represent their interests against a shareholder in the California action? I just don't. I think it took a already conflicted position and made it even more conflicted. So on top of that, let's assume. So I got that out right now. On top of that, just to throw it in. So my opinion, we start off with one, the conflict. You agreed with me there. Two, it couldn't be any better, right? What I told you about the second step, it didn't improve things, right? You
Right.
just don't know if it made things worse, right?
Right.
Okay. But certainly didn't like solve the issue that I discussed in the first part, right?
No,
Mr.
I would
Electric,
agree with you. I would agree with
Mr. Electric Knee. So how about if we add into the equation then, like an attorney out of the blue contacts plaintiffs directly in the Nevada action? So this would be let's say one of the officers and directors in the Nevada action who had to know that these particular people who were named in the complaint, I think, in the Nevada action, contacted them apparently while they were being represented.
That's a problem.
So this is and this is what I know about, right? And that's not the same firm, by the way. So like the first two we were talked about, that's one firm. The last thing is another firm.
Right.
And I go back to how I started. Remember, that's that six. I like to talk about it because I like to talk about it. I like that 6:30 a.m. The raid at 6:30 a.m. To me, that kind of it wasn't just that it was so inappropriate, but it was so inappropriate.
Right.
Really.
Right. Well, I mean, one of the very first things you do once you represent someone is send letters of representation out. And typically, 99% of the time, that letter has a clause in there, all communications must be through me now.
Yeah.
I mean, that's standard at operating procedure. In fact, you could probably get in trouble for not sending that letter out.
Well, it's possible the attorney didn't know that he didn't know they were represented. But I think the letter, wish I had it. I think the letter said something about representation on it. So it suggested some knowledge that they were already being represented. But it's kind of like, if true, it's kind of like going behind the back and kind of doing something that's kind of underhanded, I think. You're basically trying to circumvent, if that's true, you're trying to circumvent everything and kind of go direct channel and cut out their advisors.
That's right.
Right.
And so what are your options when something like that happens? You can obviously do a multitude of things. You can reach out to counsel and say, "Hey, what are you doing? I'm going to assume this was a mistake. They're represented." Or you can do that as well too. Or the other thing is you can report them to their state bar.
Yeah.
Say,
I'm
"Hey,
not,
we've
yeah,
got
I'm not,
got an issue in communications here."
yeah, I'm not inclined to do that. Not my interest, just like it wasn't interest for anybody getting in trouble. When
Right. Right.
I've told you throughout, I had no interest in anybody getting in trouble here. I want to just get it done.
Right.
So
Well, there's a certain level of professionalism and trying to do the right thing. So I do
yeah,
appreciate
I understand, but also you have to consider, this is the complicated thing. So, even if those things went on, if I still thought I have plenty of time, and they might think the same about me too. So, by the way, whatever, it happens. But I've had times where I've had cases where my opposing counsel I didn't think was too good and may have done things that may have deserved motions to disqualify, and I didn't do it
right.
because I didn't want them to leave the case.
Right.
So sometimes there is that way too. I don't know all the facts here, so I don't know what people knew, and you're really gonna have to know what people knew. But I gave you a bunch of scenarios that would at least raise your ire. Especially again, this is not something that's going to go unnoticed, right?
Right.
This it's we're
Right.
talking about it, right? They know we were going to talk about it because they have indicated they watch what is said. So
Right.
to me, it doesn't seem, doesn't seem productive. I expect to kind of and answer your question. I didn't even know if you were expecting an answer. What do you do about it? I would expect, I have an expectation that I will know what I will be doing about it in either tomorrow or Wednesday.
Right. Well, yeah. I mean, they have first off, they have to expect everything that goes on we're going to talk about publicly, as assuming that we can, assuming that it's permissible to talk about it. Uh, and they need to understand that it is
Well,
what
they
it is.
know they knew about it because I had conversations with Mr. Fattel, the
Mm,
attorney who represent. I don't know if he's still representing them, but he was involved at some point in time, and that was in March.
right.
And he acknowledged they were watching the videos. That's way back. How many months ago is that? March. That's a long time ago.
Well, you
They
and I were
were,
talking about it in April. Remember?
yeah.
I mean, we said some pretty foul things back then, if I recall.
No, you did probably not me.
When do I not?
Yeah. No, but probably all accurate too.
Well,
Listen,
yeah.
as it turned out, again, we went with like uh not all the time not all the time you're right, right?
Hmm.
Sometimes you have a feeling and you're wrong. Just this time it happened to be, it appears to have been
Well,
right.
we were making a bunch of assumptions back then that just happened to turn out to be correct.
Yeah, that is true. You talk about something and it turns out, it could be this or it could not be this. And it actually turned out to be this. And there are whole bunch of things. And my guess is, I don't know this for a fact. My guess is if you did a thorough audit of what went on, it's probably we know only a little bit,
Oh, well, that's always the way it is. We probably
right?
only scratched the
Right.
surface.
Now,
Yeah.
again, it could be better. In the perfect world, it might be better than portrayed to this point in time. I'm not expecting that, but uh, so to continue on with my boring thing about my own case. So I filed something today. They have about till Wednesday or Thursday to withdraw their First Amendment complaint. They under Rule 11, so that's for filing basically for filing a frivolous or harassing complaint.
Yep.
I think I've alleged both. And under the it's kind of funny because as time has gone on, again, like you just said, as time has gone on, it's become stronger argument because
Yeah.
things have come out, events have happened that make their position weaker. But they have till I think it's either Wednesday or Thursday withdraw their First Amendment complaint. If they withdraw their First Amendment complaint, then they're not liable for any sanctions. It's basically a freebie for them.
Right.
That's
Right.
their safety net. I think I sent an email today reminding them this week is their week. I don't know what they're going to do. Again, there's no reason. By the way, it's silly for them to be pursuing. We say it every week. It's silly because, in my opinion, besides that conflict of interest, and the question would be the stated conflict of interest, does that then create a breach of fiduciary duty by the CEO, COO for operating the legal matters like that, for not looking out for the best interests of the shareholders? I mean,
Well,
that's a question.
let's go back to something just popped into my head. And I think we alluded to it, but I don't think we really ever asked the question this way. So is it appropriate for you to reach out to the receiver to say, "Hey, these clowns have a defamation lawsuit against me, and the basis of it is some of the factual information that I was speculating on during this time period that turned out to be accurate." Is that appropriate for you to have a conversation with the receiver like that, or no?
I think anybody can have any conversation they have with the receiver. As I said, anybody could reach out. So even I could reach out, but you could look at it a different way. Like I made a motion for sanctions, right?
Right.
GTII is one of the plaintiffs, right? That's kind of like an issue, right? We were talking about a conflict. Example, conflict. They're going forward, they're exposing, no, it's not like a huge amount of money, obviously, but they're exposing GTII to a risk. So is that worth the risk? Beyond that, this is the other question. So who's paying the legal fees?
Well, right. That's what it's always come down to. That's why
Who's
you and I have
paying?
always
Yeah,
discussed
I
it.
mean, who's paying the legal fees? So if GTII is paying the legal fees for no reason other than our interests, our interests as shareholders
Right.
in this action, that I feel comfortable. By the way, I think I feel comfortable that whatever I was accused of saying, which I didn't even say, but whatever I was accused of saying has proven to be correct. So
Well, yeah.
I don't think there's any risk. I feel, maybe I'm wrong, but I feel very little risk myself. So that being the case, I just don't think it's a great expenditure of GTII money.
Yeah.
And
I think.
so
Go ahead.
therefore, that you answer your question. So should because it goes also, if in fact, and I don't know who's paying the defense in Nevada. So who in Nevada, there's 4 officers and directors who are being defended. Who's paying that pot too? Is that GTII paying that pot for legal fees also? So and I don't know, by the way, I don't know the answer to that question. But if it is either one, then the question is, will the receiver decide that perhaps those faucets should stop?
Right.
So that's kind of a long answer to your question.
Right. Well, I was just curious if the conversation is appropriate. That's really what what popped into my head. Is it appropriate for you to have a conversation with the receiver about that
Sure.
particular?
I could,
And let's flesh out what I mean when I say appropriate. I mean appropriate under the professional rules of responsibility.
yeah,
That's what I'm getting at.
yeah. Anybody, I think anybody could have a conversation. Anybody. I mean, nobody's prohibited. If you're certainly if you're a shareholder, any shareholder could reach out to him, and he'll respond to anybody who does, as far as I know. But I would say, is taking it a step farther, I think it's in the best interests of shareholders also, if, in my view, if we don't spend tens of thousands of more of our money in legal fees defending officers and directors who the court in Nevada may have found didn't act 100%, the way we would like them, or paying for the legal fees in California in a defamation action, which is, I'm not going to comment. I'll just leave it at that. But I think that those are things I'm sure the receiver will look at, because the receiver is going to look at expenditures, right? Because
Right.
not like this company is pulling in a lot of money, right?
Right.
Yeah. So
Well,
we
yes.
would,
I mean, he's obligated to. He's obligated to look at the expenditures.
yeah. I mean, and at some point in time, I think I didn't mention this part also, but I've got questions about it. And if anybody has any more questions about that topic, what I just kind of referenced, feel free. I'll discuss it. But I think the other thing that he's looking at also, and I think he's been approached, and I don't think there's anything of substance necessarily that's happened yet, but anybody that has a business opportunity or target that, call him up. Feel free. I have no skin in the game in that regard. Go for it. If you have something, I'm sure he'd be happy to hear from anybody that had a great deal for GTII. Now, I doubt at this point in time it could be done in its current status. But listen, these deals seem to take quite a bit of time to kind of come together. So now's a good time to get started.
Well,
What were you gonna
someone just asked if you can post the receiver's email address
say?
and phone number.
I can. I will do it on Twitter. I don't have it. I think it's. Let me see. Let me see if I can
Well, I
see it.
think so. Could have sworn I saw someone posted it earlier in the chat, but I
I'm
don't
gonna
know.
look, see if I could find it. Hold
Yeah,
on.
Market Watcher just said she posted, or he or she posted it above.
I think it's a pretty easy one. So um, I'm looking for it. Sorry, I didn't have it handy. Am I taking long enough? You think here?
No, you're fine.
All right. So the email address is GTII receiver RECEIVER @gmail.com. Pretty easy email address. I do not have his telephone number handy, but he does respond. But I'll post it on Twitter or X, whatever, when I get a chance. But he's responsive to email.
What was
So
it? Say it again so I can type it up and put it in the
Sure.
chat.
GTII.
Right.
Um,
Receiver.
receiver, RECEIVER
Yep.
at gmail.com.
Ugh, I don't know why my cap locks are doing that.
You know, do you ever use cap locks on your bagel?
Huh?
Do you ever use cap locks on your bagel?
Cap locks on my bagel? No.
Okay. I don't like that, by the way. For whatever reason, it annoys me when people say it's their food, your bagel, like that. I don't
Oh,
know.
yeah. I don't know why, but it gave me an error message. I can't comment. I can't post that to not legal advice.
What was that?
It's telling me I can't post the email. Yeah, it
Oh,
won't let me post the email address.
all right. So I have to.
Sorry, folks. I was trying to type it up for you, but can't do it.
I'm doing it. So it's in the comments.
Whew.
If I spelled it correctly, looks like I did.
Somebody just typed it up. Oh, yeah, that was you.
Yeah, it was me.
Oh, you aren't a mod, JR. So
No.
I can't post an email address?
I don't know. You should be able to. You should check out, call up, do something. I can put you in a private chat though.
It's fine. It's out there. Somebody got it.
All right. Okay. So yeah, feel free to reach out. I'm sure he'll respond. And again, I'll post a telephone number when I can. But I know he's been responsive to me on email, so I would assume he's responsive to anybody else. I assume, if you could be helpful, great. Listen, it's everybody, everybody that can help assist in his regard. It's appreciated by everybody. Do you have any other questions, Senor?
No, I'm good. I'm just getting a little richy because I can't sit still because my knee's all messed up. That's all.
I forgot. I was going to say a story. I'm going back to Lebanon again. When I was there in Israel, I had an uncle who was like this really great tour guide of Israel, and he became like a senior vice president of the Israeli airline. He would buy the jets and buy the engines and travel around the world, literally, and promoting the country and the plane. And he started out as a mechanic. So he worked his way up from mechanic all the way up to senior vice president.
Sure.
And I don't think, as most of my family was, not formally educated, because during the years they would have been educated, they weren't in school, as it turned out, because they couldn't be in school, because they weren't allowed to be in school or whatever. But he was a great tour guide. So he would take me around when I would go visit Israel. He would take me around, and because of who he was and who he knew everybody, and he would take you whatever, and it was just me and him. And he he wasn't super religious, but he knew biblical history really well. And so he would take you someplace and he'd be able to tell you what occurred. So one time he took me to the border of Israel and Lebanon.
Right.
And he knew the guy who was on the other side of the border, who lived on the other side of the border. And I remember he opened the fence and we walked into Lebanon, and he introduced me to this guy. And I think we had like a tea or something, whatever.
Right.
But I remember that's the area now that you couldn't go into at all. So I was wondering about that gentleman on the Lebanese side of the border. What became of him? That location obviously was like probably the worst position you could be, right by the border. But I remember my uncle had at the time, and kind of tells you kind of the way the interaction was too. He was really friendly with everybody, as it was. But I just remember going into Lebanon. It was the one time I went to Lebanon. It was literally this walking through a fence. It was like a gate, not like a broken fence, literally a gate, and it was perfectly fine.
Yeah.
Anyway, that has nothing to do with GTII as far as I know. If it does, I will let you know. Do you have anything to say on the way out, Monsieur?
No, I'm good. I think it was a good conversation. We got a lot of good questions asked and
Yeah,
answered.
the questions were good. I think the questions were really good. Yeah, I have nothing else to say. Again, except for everybody, thank you very much.
Yep. As
Oh,
always, thanks everyone.
yeah, that receiver is a tough word. I before E except after C. Isn't that
Yeah,
it?
you spelled it wrong. Yeah.
Yeah, I know. That rule, I should know it from like only 700 years ago.
Yeah.
Uh,
I can't hack on you for spelling because I'm terrible. I'm the world's worst speller. So
to everybody out there, thank you very much. Obviously, if we get some more information about GTII in during the week, we will let you know. And it appears that information is trickling in very fast. I should have mentioned this. So I'd contact with multiple gentlemen who contacted me offering various pieces of information. I had not had substantial contact with either of these gentlemen before. So people are just kind of reaching out and talking. It's kind of interesting what's going on, and I expect therefore to be more information very soon. So that's where I will leave it. Everybody be well, take care, have a great Monday, enjoy Monday Night Football if that's on right now, I think.
should be yeah. I don't even know.
And again, Ace, who won the 49er game yesterday? I didn't see it. Anyway,
go Birds.
Yeah, take care, everybody. Have a great day, night, and be well.